Welcome to this episode of our interviews with CEOs of customers who have worked with inviteCHANGE for generative coaching for individuals, executive teams, and the entire workforce in their organization. I have such a warm heart spot for our guest here today. CEO of Bridging Access to Care is with me, and I'm going to have her introduce herself because the history that she brings into this magnificent role she plays in Brooklyn, New York, here in the East Coast of the United States, is a wonderful story. So Nadine, would you share a little bit about what brought you to Bridging Access to Care and what brought you to bring us in?
Awesome. Thank you, Janet. This is really an extraordinary journey. I came to Brooklyn AIDS Task Force, which is now Bridging Access to Care, in 1998, at the height of the HIV/AIDS epidemic. At the time, we were looking at launching a treatment adherence program that would address the issues they were having around medication adherence. And so I came in as the coordinator of that program. There was absolutely no template for it, so I had to really dig in deep and go in with my intuition and innovation to create a program that essentially became one of the models in New York City. And so I started that journey there and sort of moved up very quickly to become the acting director of our support services, which was really around COBRA case management at that time. And then expanded into the clinical aspect and took over the clinical services and became the clinical director there for the organization, addressing the treatment adherence, addressing issues around the social care needs of our clients, and really working on the care coordination piece. One of the things that I noticed entering the organization was the lack of team work, and so I focused on that and began to build around that. And then I, moved on and acquired other programs, was part of the grant writing team, doing sort of community needs assessment and working my way through that, and then became the director of social support services. So this is sort of a very interesting trajectory as I learn and grow and develop. But what was very key to me was the importance of allowing me the freedom to innovate and the freedom to assess and to make change as needs be, because it's critical for any organization to grow and to develop and to sustain the services that they provide over time, to be able to be flexible and innovative and understand what's going on and what's the climate in the field at the time. So that was critical for me. And then I became years past, I actually worked on a very innovative program, which was a system level change, which was introducing electronic health record system into the organization, but from a framework of trauma-informed care. And so that was very exciting for me. I gained a lot, and I became really impassioned about the work around trauma. And so for the last, 12 to 13 years, I've been sort of working diligently to change the organization's culture around trauma-informed care. And in so doing, created a very innovative project through our health record system to deliver and assess trauma-informed care. So that was very exciting for me. But not only that, I saw how that could help to change the lives of individuals. And so that was created even greater attention for me to really invest more and to really see this change in the organization and to watch people grow and develop, whether it's staff or our clients. And so that kind of led me to really begin to rethink even more so about system level change and the importance of change in the organization. One thing I didn't have was the support of upper leadership. So I am very vested in making sure that from the board on down, we understand the change that is necessary. And so one of the things that led me to invite change was really looking at what's the dynamic in our team from executive leadership on down. And as a believer in leadership by example, I decided that we would start with us as executive, our 4 team members as executive, the CPO, the CEO, chief of staff, and our CFO and myself, to really look at us first and to see what's happening around us, how we interact, how we show up in the workplace. And so I engaged my chief of staff to, find a resource for us to do that, because I believe that having an objective approach where it's not pointing fingers, it's not judging one another, but it's really discovery, was really my salient thought about where we need to be as an organization. And if we're going to be leaders in the organization, that we need to sort of look at ourselves first. And so when Esther Locke, who is my chief of staff, brought the invite change information to me, and I sort of evaluate the way that the approach, and then meeting Janet and Sarah was sort of the icing on the cake, because they were speaking my language and they understood it very well, that change is in increments, and that we need to understand where we are, and we need to embrace the differences, right? And that will sort of encourage us to make the change without feeling judged or feeling that we can't show up as our authentic self, which was very critical for me. Because I've been through this change process, and I've seen where organizations would have trainings, and it was just a sort of a band-aid on a problem. And so I didn't want to do that. I wanted to sort of get to the source of the problem, so that we can have an ongoing change and recognize what we need to do as a team together, understanding our differences, embracing those, right? Because it's very challenging for human to even get into that space and also be vulnerable, right? So that's kind of what brought me to invite change. And I am very grateful that we made that decision, because it has helped our organization to change a lot. And we celebrate those small changes as we go, and knowing that it's a journey, right? It's not a destination. We keep doing this as we discover ourselves, as we recognize, and then we're intentional about the changes that we need to make. And so that's what kind of bring me to invite change.
I hope our listeners are soaking in this wonderful balance in Nadine of being an innovator at every step of the way. I would say actually even anticipating what was needed in the community, and how you were able to anticipate and solve for what I call unicorn thinking in leaders, which is fulfilling an unmet need we don't even know we have, as opposed to problem solving. And your capacity to see that on behalf of yourself and your team made this a wonderful partnership. Our work always is examining what's at the root. I don't believe in the, turning the wheel multiple times, just solving the symptoms, because it actually creates so much more pain. And while it may take a little more time to be thoughtful and keep unpacking the layers, it does provide something more sustaining, which is the other piece you've mentioned here. And I think it might be useful for people to have a sense from you, Nadine. How were you every step of the way? So we've been working together now for a couple of years. What have you been paying attention to as the evidence that progress was occurring in a way that you thought was useful?
Oh, that's a very great question. And I think it comes in multiple ways. First, there was an increase in awareness, right? Awareness of how we show up and respond to the world. And also, it was also looking at the team and really recognizing the micro changes that were happening. The language changed, the approach changed, whether or not we were being more compassionate about, or giving people the grace, right, to do what they do, but also help to support and help them to understand that we are in this learning process. And so for me, even looking at my team, it also helped me to recognize who was on the team and was really for the long haul, and who was just, we're doing this exercise, right? And so you'll find that. And I always note that it is important to find the right person for the job. So, we could be very good at things that we do, but we might not be the right person for a position or a situation and time. And I think that's what really helped me as we recognize what was happening and helped to sort of frame the decisioning around what needs to get done, how we're going to move forward in a way that's, one, is non-threatening, right? But having people come to the realization that I essentially need to hop off the boat because we're not meshing, we're not on the same team, we're not on the same page, right? And helping people to recognize that. And also the awareness around, oh, I am showing up this way, and I might need help and support from my team around how I can think differently, approach it differently, right? And help to sort of foster a different outcome, right? I can tell you that, and I'll give you a specific example around the responsiveness even of the leadership team, because we started with the executive team and then we moved on to the leadership, because I think if we got it and then start to sort of trickle that down, right, then the staff, the front line will eventually get it, right? So it was sort of a top-down approach per se, but knowing that we had to identify where we are as individuals and as leaders before we can help to model, right, for the frontline staff. And so there's a classic example, and I know that it's working, and really why I'm so impassioned about it, and so why I'm really thankful that we did this together. And so you would recognize in meetings, right, even in leadership meetings, when certain people will speak or say something, the body language, right, the expressive, like people begin to shut down. And I was so pleased that, it helped me to coach others to look at other members of the team differently, not to take it as something, oh, agree with them, but allowing them to see a different perspective. And so even in the interaction, right, they were now able to think differently and work differently. And I say that to say our Christmas party this year, I was amazed when I showed up at the Christmas party. Two people I know that day, and I won't name them, who were very much the butting heads, right? They were actually hugging and laughing, and they had to really work together for this particular event. And I know because of the different approach, even if they didn't say it, I'm very aware of the body language that's happening. And I was very, very pleased that they could look at each other, embrace the differences from a positive light, right? And can work together, because this is the way the world is, right? We're going to meet people that we have differences with, but really it's the common goal where we need to get to. And if we can focus on those things, it's really critical that we understand that it's not about the person per se, it's where we need to go together as a team to get the results that we need to get. And I think that's just an amazing revelation that occurred out of this work together with inviteCHANGE.
You're calling forward a very important point, I think, for listeners to separate in their mind. And it's the difference between how do we get the work done and who must engage with each other and in what way, right? So part of it's mindset. And do we believe that each other has the resourceful, capable creativity to do the role? Not skill, but mindset, right? Our belief, our commitment, our rally around the synergy. And can I lift up from transaction to the relationship? Because what we certainly watched, Nadine, was that everybody on the team, it started with the four of you at the top, of course, leading by example. And even amongst the four of you, it's like, you know what? We don't spend much time really getting to know each other. And as you did, it opened up the conversation, which was that was the key problem Esther presented to us, that we can't get the leadership team to give us feedback or contribute into new decisions, new ideas, new thinking. They just sort of take it from us and run with it, not always the way you wanted. So how do you experience through the coaching, both individually and what we did in the teaming, around opening up or liberating people feeling more comfortable to speak their mind and participate?
One of the things that I think was very helpful was the tilt assessment, because it identified sort of where we were leaning towards and how that impacts the way we respond to the world. And sort of also, again, the awareness and recognition that when I'm tilting this way, how is it perceived by others? And how can I change that? Because change happens within us, right? I can't change someone else, but I definitely can change the way I show up. And so it brought this awareness of, Nadine, you're tilting this way, you're leaning towards this, and this could be perceived this way. So you need to make a shift. How do you get to the center? And how do you allow the team to help you to get to the center, right? How can we have open conversations about, okay, so this is what Nadine needs to do this, right? And so I'm going to make sure she have that so that she can get it. And how do I respond to Esther that this is what Esther needs, so that when I show up and I realize that she's reacting, that how can I provide that resource to sort of recenter? And I think having done that and having people recognize, like, wow, this is truly me. Right? So how do I change that? Because it's all about behavior change, right? And that's a very hard thing to do, right? But then it's the constant iteration of and recognition of who you are, how you show up, how I interact with others, and how I can allow others to help me, right? And even making a conscious decision about this is how I show up, but I need to shift here. So when I recognize it, now I could say, okay, for example, I won't make a decision on the spot. I would say, okay, wait 1 second, let me think about that, and let me come back to you about that so that I can recenter. So I think this is really a phenomenal way of self-discovery, right? And helping you to learn about yourself and about others, because naturally we are so engrossed in the work that we do that we don't take time to evaluate, what's happening around us, because we're so focused on getting the job done. And I think what I came away from this was, okay, we have a job to get done, but how we're going to get it done, and how are we going to grow in the process, right? And how we can bring others along in the process, recognizing without, and you said it well, Janet, I hesitate to use the word judgment, right? But without being judgmental, right? Right, because judgment is actually great in inspiring the curiosity that you need to work together. And how does this sort of change my perspective about even the way we think about judgment, right? And how we really embrace the curiosity around what's happening in the situation, what's happening with someone, how we can be more curious about it and learn about what's happening rather than make assumptions about that.
Uh, Can I double down with you on that one a little bit? Because this was really a delight to watch happen. And you've said something that so much of leadership development is done in an outside in kind of way. Here's your principles, here's the skills in order to embody those principles, and then there's a metric that goes with it. That's not how we work. As you very eloquently have been describing, we work very inside out. So first we start with each leader. Who are you? What matters to you? What are your values? How aligned are you with the values of the organization and with your peers? But the next thing you said that I think is the secret sauce for why you all were so successful so quickly in rippling this in the organization is that you actually invested in what the other is experiencing. So if you walk into a conversation, the old way was, I'm taking it personal that you're having a moment, right? That there's emotion in your voice or you're feeling intense. And what you're describing is recognizing when somebody is behaving in that way, it's not personal. And that what they're needing is something that would ground and center so that the energy can shift to thinking about the thing that you share in common, the work that needs to be done. And I think that that awareness first starts with, I'm okay, right? I'm fine just the way I am. And so is the other person. It's situational, it's not personal. And I think that maturation in your leadership style, yours and everybody on the execs team and in the leadership team, was a game changer in the way that the staff are responding to the way you're using curiosity. It's not curiosity to inspect, it's genuine interest in who are you and how do we create the environment together that serves you. Does that resonate the way I'm describing it for you?
Absolutely. And I just want to add to that. It's really looking from a systems approach rather than looking at the individual faults so that people can be more authentic in how they show up. That I can be me. I don't have to pretend. I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to let perfection be the enemy of my good, right? And I don't think we'll ever get to perfection, but we are sort of pushing towards that mark, towards that higher calling of perfection, but knowing that it's not the destination. It encompasses working with a mind of excellence, wanting to engage others in the process, right? So yeah, it's mindful of each other that we're, as you say, showing up as whole, right? And so that we can, you're resourceful, right? You're capable, right? And so embracing all of that, right? And really working together to ensure that everybody feels comfortable in their skin, right? And we don't have to have this hierarchical way of dealing with each other, which really never works because people don't show up as with their full potential, right? And they're always concerned about how I'm looking. But here we're talking about we're focusing on where we need to get to, and as a collective, we're innovative, we're creative, we are resourceful, and we can put all that together and really be someone or a team to be reckoned with, that we can get this done together and not individually and not be afraid to show up and not to know, right? And I'm just going back to something you said earlier around skills, right? So you can train skills, embrace the change outside of the individual, right? You can, that skill is something that you can train, but getting people to work together, it's behavior change. It's the mindset, it's a perspective. And I think that's what I came away with.
You also used one of my favorite lines. Well, one of my favorite lines is pause gives more time than it takes. And you were describing your own process of being able to short circuit knee jerk responses to, I need a decision, Nadine, to say, hang on a second, let's pull back. Because in that instance, you get perspective. And you might realize, I want to ask somebody else. I want to collect a little more information, which is what prevents faulty decision making, which is very costly and results in rework. And I watched this in particular between you and the CFO, being able to slow things down just enough, not, gobs of hours and days and weeks. Sometimes it's simply moments, cutting the energy to say, let's think a little bigger. Let's think a little more systemically. And this is a mindset shift, recognizing that pause gives more time than it takes. And you all really embrace this, and I'm seeing it in your leadership team as well. And I wonder, what do you see coming from your community, how they're interacting with the organization? And I wonder if you're starting to see anything show up there in terms of results or outcomes.
Sure. I think it's also playing out in the strategic partnerships that we're forming within the community. I see that even most recently, we've partnered with the owner of Flatbush Gardens around addressing the mental health issues, the homelessness, and I was really taken aback at how much aligned that we were in really sort of laying out the framework of what this interaction would be, and also the dependency on a BAC as a leader in the community around behavioral health issues and homelessness, and how the dependence on the relationship is sort of unfolding in a very organic way, because now it's reliance on us based on how we show up, you're right, how we are interacting with the community, how we're being called and how we present, right, ourselves as partners in the community, understanding where they are, having the conversation about what needs to get done, and then coming to a consensus of how we would move forward. And so this dependency on BAC as an expert in the community, and connecting that with the approach that I am showing up with resources, right? I have the toolbox that you could work from, but I'm not showing up with a prescription for you. I am assessing what your needs are, and then based on that, we can figure out together how we unfold this working relationship and how it would impact the community at large on a whole.
I'm busting my buttons smiling as I listen to your vocabulary, Nadine, in talking about what we use as the definition of mindset. And you've talked about being mindful about your mindset. And this was an early piece of the work that we did together. And for the audience to know that our mindset has three very important influences. And they're happening for the most part unconsciously, unless somebody asks us to think about it. One, it influences how we show up. Secondly, it influences what we choose to say and how we deliver the message. And the third is the process of decision making. So mindset matters a lot. And it's comprised of a number of things: frame of reference, attitude, thoughts, beliefs, habits, and routine actions. The body likes it. It likes having all that in the habit space because it's an energy conservationist. There we go. And unfortunately, because the environment changes so much, and this is why it's just such a joy to hear you tell the story, you saw the environment changing. You knew that your team needed to have a different mindset. And that was really where we started. And we started with a technique we call teaming agreements that I heard you just describe using with your strategic partner, right? What is the way we will behave with each other that lets us each bring the best of each other? And these are, in the old days in facilitation, we used to call them ground rules, and nobody ever followed them. We take a very different approach, that the agreements are a living, breathing resource that helps the intersection between authority that people are granted by whomever. It could be a boss, it could be the partnership, it could be the county, it could be the state, right? Authority to act. And I'm going to accept responsibility to fulfill that authority. What do I do when it doesn't work, when there's a breakdown, when there's a rupture? The agreements made in advance are how we navigate those as, okay, that's the situation, but we're more than that. We have more resource than any one situation blocks us from using. And I've watched you completely integrate this. And I realize you probably have some things that you're noticing in your own work processes inside the organization that are a little different because you all live in this mindset of being very deliberate to your teaming agreements. And what might some of those be?
Glad you said that because, and I want to preference that, you know, these teaming agreements change accordingly. Like when we added the leadership team, we gave them an opportunity to add their feedback to it and incorporated those teaming agreements around how we would show up, what our response with each other would be, right? What are the expectation, whether it's around excellence, what defining that, what does that mean for the team? Because it might be different from what we think as the executive team. And so we need to make sure that we're all on the same page when we integrated these. And it sort of morphed, or, you know, it got better each time as we continue to discuss, you know, having the same voice, having the one voice, and how do we do that? You know, how would we communicate with each other were important things. What do we define as excellence, and what does that mean when we show up in the workplace? And so all of these things that we jointly came up together with is sort of our measuring stick of our responsiveness to the environment and how we respond to each other. And again, it's not something that you create like, you know, and put on the shelf. It's something that you are constantly testing, right? Did I really show up this way today? And if not, what happened? Am I in alignment with the teaming agreements or not? And we're going to go back to it as an accountability factor, like, okay, we said we're going to do this. However, this didn't happen today. And then be more curious about why not, right? Not from a place of blame, but from a place of understanding why in the context of the situation, why this didn't happen. And do we have the resources? Is there something in our system that prevented that, so that we continue to sort of grow and develop? And if we need to modify and change the ground rules or the teaming agreements, then we do so accordingly. But that's kind of our measuring stick, what holds us together as a team, right? And so it's really an amazing piece that what I want for the team is for it to become a sort of entwined into your day-to-day. It's not something you do, it's not the other, it's what you do, right? It's who we are.
It's the way we be.
Right. Yes.
You know, I think one of the objectives you had was about creating greater unity and inclusiveness. You know, by definition, you're working with a very diverse population, which means to meet that population, you want a diverse workforce, which everybody who's in a leadership role knows that's not the easiest thing. And it's so rewarding when we can watch, like you did at the Christmas party, two people who seem to be at odds with each other now realizing that they have their common humanity and their common shared purpose of being leaders as part of bridging access to care. And I think that commitment to unity, this is a little bit of a technical term for the audience, but Dr. Tim Clark, who has written a lot about psychological safety, his definition of that is rewarded vulnerability. And that's what you've just described, that it's okay to say, you know what, I didn't show up very well today. And I realize that I never let you all know that I'm having difficulty at home, or perhaps I'm feeling like I'm drowning and I haven't asked for any help. And now I'm embarrassed to tell you that I'm not going to make my deadline. That when those disclosures can be said without consequence, that feels like I'm being pushed away in some way or diminished in some way, it becomes safe for everyone to ask for the assistance faster, sooner, well in advance of when something's about to fail. This is what we're looking for inside of organizations. If we really want unity, then we must be rewarding a vulnerability, and the agreements are a way to get there.
Absolutely, Janet. I just believe that vulnerability is strength. We might have come from the school that you can't be vulnerable. Oh, I must have the answer for everything. I'm a leader now. Oh, I'm the CEO of the organization. I should have the answer for everything. But no, that's why I have my team, because I don't have the answers for everything, right? And so I can be vulnerable. And that really demonstrates to them that you can be, again, the authentic you, because you don't know everything, but you can always find out about everything. Right? You don't have to have the answers now, but you can work on it and work on it together. And when you have achieved it together, you celebrate it together. And that's why it's really, I would say, anyone who is thinking of organizational change should really invite change to come in. Because it's not just an approach where, okay, I teach you this, it's making it practicable. How do I lift the theory? How do I lift the evaluation? It's not just writing a team agreement and have it sit there on the shelf and gather dust, but it is a living, breathing document that guides your actions, that helps you to make decisions about your day to day. And it's something that should be incorporated in your workflow process, in how you do things, in how you show up. It should be that gauge that helps you to shift and change as needs be, especially in this environment where it's a very dynamic environment. So, you can't say, oh, I'm stuck here. You really have to figure out now, what do we need to do in this moment within this context, right? And does that inform the overarching goal, or is it something that we need to, think about in the moment for now, right? And how that helps us to frame our decision making down the road, how it helps to guide us, right? To even look at how we form partnerships, right? Who do I want to partner with outside of the organization, right? Because whether we like it or not, internally we are a partnership. So how are we going to manage that? How are we going to make sure that everybody feels comfortable within their skin and everybody is rowing in the same direction, right? Even when we don't fully get it, but we understand that the team is working together towards a conscious goal, right? And so how am I going to be a part of that? And if I can't, then it's time for me to hop off the train.
And really, I've watched you transition leaders with, great grace, for people to not leave with heartburn and hard feelings, but to realize there's a season sometimes for our roles in our work life, and moving from one organization to another doesn't have to be things that happened out of tragedy, but it can happen out of choice. And I think your teaming agreements and the transparency that you've brought forward is really helping people recognize, wow, I really do have the authority to make good decisions for myself and for my team. And I hear you normalizing, I don't know. I love that. I wish I could get all leaders to normalize that I don't know is a superpower as a leader, because it opens the space for everybody else to step up and say, you know what? I know something. What about this idea? And in that moment, the generative capacity to originate new thinking begins. But it started with the I don't know.
You're absolutely right. And I think people are so afraid of the I don't know that it creates a toxic environment that we don't want, right?
That's right.
Because it creates cover up. So you can, and I always say information drives decision making, right? So if you're not giving me the full scope of the information I need to make a decision, I'm going to make a half of a decision, a quarter of a decision, which I don't feel good about. I want to go in knowing that I can really trust the information I'm getting so that I can make sound decision. And that's what sound decision making is all about. It's not about trying to cover up and giving me half the story, because essentially the results are going to be half what you need, right? So I really encourage people, my staff, to be vulnerable and to say, it's okay, I don't know. I'm not going to let perfection be the enemy of my good. I am whole, I am capable, I'm resourceful, right? And I'm creative. And so in that sense, and I see it coming out more, how do I address a particular situation within that context? And how do I help the individual to see and to learn and to grow from whatever the issue is, right? And I think it's a great part of development, you know.
We can't ever really know another person unless we ask. And I think leaders who acquire that natural curiosity, make room for someone to be fully listened to and heard and understood, are the ones who retain personnel. And they find those folks are the ones who get promoted and they become the next generation of leaders without having to have such rigidity around succession, but people can grow in role because they're trusted to be themselves in that environment. And that all starts with how the leader chooses to be a learner of their workforce. I've always said for years that your very best consultants already work for you. Why are you hiring somebody outside to tell you what to do? Because, of course, the workforce is who talks to your customer and they know what that experience is, and this is ultimately what you're after, is that the openness is focused on the shared purpose as opposed to protection, as you said, colluding or competition or the things that are in the way of collaborating in a healthy way.
Yes, it also gives us the grace to work together and to appreciate each other and appreciate the differences and learn from each other. I think it's one of the biggest things for me is create a learning environment where we can grow and develop and expand, you know, our scope. Because I really truly believe that's how we become, you know, better at what we do and how we can help our communities to get better and become more well. Yeah.
Well, I feel very privileged and honored to have supported your organization and you in particular over these 2 years. And your time here today, I hope, is inspiring other leaders to recognize they have it in them to be innovative and to create a unity and inclusion and a really healthy environment for learning, growth, and change. And it can be invited, as you have said.
Thank you, Jared.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you for taking up our organization and helping us through this process. And I am very pleased at the outcome and where we will be and where we continue to grow and, you know, channel this process. And I'm just really appreciative.
Thank you so much for joining us today for this CEO interview. We will be offering more of these, so stay tuned on the screen. The next one will show up when it's ready. And wishing you great ease in inviting change into your organization and life.